One sentence. That's all it took to bring down a well-known liberal TV host, sending shockwaves through the media world. Was it a justified consequence or an overreaction? As the controversy exploded, fans and critics found themselves locked in a heated debate. But what exactly was said, and why did it cost everything? Let's dive into the moment that changed everything. The evening started like any other. Kimmel, as host of his late-night talk show, was gearing up for a high-profile debate between two political figures, himself representing a more liberal stance, and Karoline Leavitt, a rising conservative star. The stakes were high for both, as the nation was more polarized than ever. Each side had passionate followers, and the tension in the room was palpable. Kimmel had always prided himself on his ability to be fair, to dig into issues without resorting to personal attacks. Tonight, something felt different. The energy in the room crackled with an intensity he hadn't felt in a long time. The election cycle was nearing its peak, and the pressure on both him and Karoline to win the debate, to make their points loud and clear, was overwhelming. As the debate progressed, it was clear that Kimmel was playing hardball. He pushed Karoline on everything from her views on healthcare to her stance on climate change, questioning her commitment to the issues in front of the American people. Karoline, calm and collected, pushed back, often with a sharp rebuttal, but there was something more at play. Kimmel wasn't just challenging her ideas, he was challenging her character. But this is where the trouble began. Kimmel's words were pointed, sharper than usual. He was determined to make his points, to show the world why his perspective was the right one. But what started as a battle of ideas soon turned personal, and that was where the line began to blur. It happened so quickly. One moment, the debate was about policy, and the next, it wasn't. Kimmel, driven by the pressure to make an impact, pushed Karoline on a topic he knew would sting. He went after her views on the growing economic inequality in the country, trying to paint her as someone who didn't care about the working class. It wasn't enough to just argue her ideas, he now seemed determined to attack her integrity. Kimmel said with a pointed smirk, "Maybe if conservatives spent less time whining about their so-called victimhood and more time actually contributing to society, we wouldn't be in this mess in the first place." The words hung in the air, sharp and cutting. They weren't just a critique of her policies or her views, they were an attack on her as a person. The camera zoomed in on Karoline's face, and for a moment the world seemed to freeze. There was no immediate reaction from her, just a brief flicker of disbelief in her eyes. But then, as if her own anger had been ignited by Kimmel's callousness, Karoline responded not with fury, but with the kind of calm that made Kimmel's words feel all the more offensive. "Do you honestly believe that?" Karoline asked, her voice steady but carrying an underlying current of hurt, "or are you just saying it for effect?" The audience shifted, unsure of how to react. Kimmel had gone too far, and now it was his turn to respond. But the damage had already been done. He had taken the debate from an intellectual exchange to an ugly, personal confrontation. And the worst part? He knew it. He realized in that exact moment that he had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. The debate could have continued, and in many ways it should have. Karoline, a skilled debater, would have likely continued making her case as calmly as she always did. But Kimmel's words, once spoken, couldn't be unsaid. And in that moment, something shifted that seemed entirely unfair. The public's perception. Kimmel was the host, the person in control of the conversation, and yet it was Karoline who now seemed like the one under attack. The unfairness lay not just in what Kimmel had said, but in how his words had painted Karoline in a way that made her appear as if she was the villain in this story. He had shifted the narrative. Instead of addressing the issues at hand, the focus was now on her personal character and integrity, something that had nothing to do with the debate they had agreed to have. This moment wasn't just unfair to Karoline, it was unfair to everyone watching. By making the debate about Karoline's personal worth instead of the policies she championed, Kimmel had shown his true colours. It wasn't about ideas anymore, it was about power and control. He had turned the conversation into a spectacle for his own gain, all while pretending to hold the moral high ground. The aftermath of that night was swift and unforgiving. Clips of Kimmel's remark flooded social media, with thousands of viewers condemning him for crossing the line. The backlash didn't just come from conservative circles, it came from all sides, as people began to question whether Kimmel, once the darling of late-night television, had let his desire to win get the best of him. Within hours, the hashtag #FireKimmel was trending. The once beloved host, known for his charm and wit, had become a symbol of hypocrisy and thoughtlessness. His remarks had been more than just a debate gone wrong, they had been an attack on a woman's integrity in the most public way possible. The network, under intense pressure, acted quickly. Within 24 hours, Kimmel was removed from his role, his career hanging by a thread. For a man who had spent years building a reputation of fairness, it was a stunning fall from grace. And it wasn't just about losing his job. It was about losing the trust of an audience that had once looked up to him. As Kimmel sat alone in his dressing room, he couldn't help but replay the moment over and over in his mind. What had he been thinking? Had he truly believed that Karoline, a person just like him, deserved to be reduced to a stereotype? The truth was, Kimmel's mistake wasn't just in what he said, it was in the way he allowed the pressure of the debate to consume him, to turn him into something he wasn't. He had gotten so caught up in winning the argument that he had forgotten the most important lesson: to respect the person sitting across from you. But the damage was done. Kimmel had played the game of politics, and in doing so, he had lost. His words, though spoken in the heat of the moment, had resonated with an unforgiving public. And in the end, he realised that sometimes the price of a single mistake is far higher than we could ever expect. The weeks following Kimmel's removal from his show were a blur. He issued apology after apology, but none of them could undo the damage. The media spun the story in every direction, but the fact remained: Kimmel had crossed a line, and that line was not easily forgotten. But it wasn't just his career that was broken. It was his self-image, his belief in the very thing that had made him successful in the first place: his integrity. In the end, Kimmel's fall from grace wasn't just about losing his job, it was about losing the thing he had built his entire career on: trust. And for someone whose job it was to be a voice of reason, the loss of that trust was perhaps the most devastating blow of all. James Kimmel's story is one of failure, yes, but it is also one of learning the hardest of lessons. In a world that often demands more drama than it needs, it's easy to lose sight of the most basic principle: respect for your opponents, respect for the truth, and respect for the trust that people place in you. And when that respect is lost, it can be nearly impossible to regain. The debate, once a moment of intellectual exchange, had become a painful reminder of the consequences of words left unchecked. It wasn't just about Kimmel's career. It was about the very nature of discourse itself and the power that a single moment of unfairness could have on a person's life. If you enjoyed the story and found it meaningful, don't forget to leave a like. It really helps us reach more people. We'd also love to hear from you. Share your thoughts and the lessons you've learned in the comments below. Your insights could inspire someone